beginning, but really the whole point of this is to give each of you, even though those who've been here for a long time and understand a lot of this stuff, to those who are relatively new and don't really know much about this stuff, trying to touch on a little bit that will help all of you. Everything from a little bit of background on how we do a hearing test. So if you happen to interact with somebody or talk to somebody, you at least kind of understand some of the general terms. I want to talk a little bit about some of the equipment, some of the parts. Parts Lynn could probably actually talk about more than I can. But I want to talk about some of this stuff as far as how it's related to what you guys might see on invoices, talk to somebody about, get questions about, wonder who to talk to about different things, that kind of thing. So I'm going to kind of run through this. I want to start off with a little bit, and this is going to be very basic, but just how we hear. To give you a little bit of background, so as I'm talking about some different things, so if somebody says something about a bone oscillator, you understand how that has anything to do with hearing whatsoever. So I'm just starting off with the ear. This part here should look pretty familiar to everybody. This serves to collect the sound. This is your outer ear. This is your ear canal right here. So when you're trying to stick a finger in there, or Q-tip, or you technically shouldn't be doing Q-tips, but
how far in is your eardrum roughly?
About 2 centimeters.
A little less than an inch.
A little less than an inch. Yeah. And as a quick aside, I'm an audiologist first. I gotta talk about some of this stuff. The reason you shouldn't use Q-tips is because wax is typically in this area here. It shouldn't be down here. When you put a Q-tip in there, you may pull some out, but you end up pushing more in. Your ear doesn't clean itself as well down there. So it's a self-cleaning mechanism. It's supposed to push the wax out on its own, but once the wax gets back here, it's really tough for it to do that. So my little PSA plug. It's part of me. I can't let myself.
So you leave the wax in.
Leave the wax. It's protecting.
What's it looks gross? Like, can you scoop it out with your nail? That's what I do.
That's
with my
not too
little
far.
guy.
Yeah, that's not too
It's
far.
that wax there.
Yeah, no,
Scoop it out.
it looks kind of gross.
My little guy, he gets the wax in there.
Are you saving it, or is this going to like be on this jar? Okay, just checking.
I can bring it in.
Thank you.
Show and tell. Baby wax.
So outer ear is here. This is your middle ear, which has 3 bones in there. The malleus, incus, and stapes are the technical terms for it. But the hammer, anvil, and stirrup is kind of a generic name for them, and that's because that's what they look like. And then this is your inner ear here. So sound comes in here. So just sound waves, like what you think of sound as, enters here, moves your eardrum back and forth. When it moves your eardrum back and forth, it moves the bones, which creates a little plunger action from this tiny little bone right there, and that moves the fluid that's in here. When that fluid is moved, there's a bunch of tiny little, millions of little hair cells in there that pick up the sound and then send the sound up the nerve, send the electrical impulses. So basically, this collects sound, this converts acoustical sound into mechanical energy, and then this right here converts that mechanical energy to fluid motion, which is then stimulates the nerve, and that's how we hear. So the equipment, what I'm going to talk about today is really just basic hearing testing stuff and some of the things related to that. But it all does kind of relate back to this. So when we do a hearing test, as many of you are either have had done or are at least familiar with the term headphones. These are headphones that we would use for a hearing test. You're going to notice that pretty much everything has red and blue, just like our logo. That was not a mistake. Red is for the right ear, blue is for the left. So everything's red and blue, so it's just kind of a standard color coding that everything is. But these are general headphones. Connected to the audiometer, this is going to present tones. So the headphones are going to sit out here, present that acoustical sound, and go in there and stimulate it. So that's one of the sounds. And we do different pitches. Some of these may be harder to hear than others. We do some lower pitches, which kind of hear that. And what's happening when we do this, and we've got this on, the patient has a response button in their hand, something like this, or something like this, and every time they hear the tone, they push the button. So these are 2 of the response buttons. We have some that we make here. We've got some, each manufacturer has their own. This is GSI, this is Interacoustics. I think Mako uses this one as well. But this is just a way for the patient to respond and say, yeah, I hear it. some places will say raise your hand. There are some automated audiometers that they just hit start, and then as the patient hears it, they push the button, and then that tells the audiometer they heard it, and then the audiometer goes on and does the rest of it as well. So every time they hear it, that means that the sound obviously was picked up here, went through here, did all its stuff in here, went through there, and went up to the nerve and up to the brain, and the patient was able to say, yes, I hear that. So, like I said, we've got headphones to do that with. We also have insert phones. So these are the two common ways that we introduce sound into the ear. Again, you'll notice consistent red and blue. So these would go clipped on here, and then they've got a little tip on here that you would put these insert ear tips. So anybody who's been in the back has seen bags upon bags upon bags of these. But these, so we sell these in supplies, but these are the insert ear tips. So we'll go on here, you roll it up real small. Anybody who's ever worn like foam earplugs, this is basically what this is. So you roll it up real small, you put it in the ear, and it actually goes into about right here and delivers the sound in that way. So it's just another way of coupling the earphone to the ear so that the patient can hear it. And then they again respond every time they hear it. I won't go into all the details, but there are some differences in why you use one versus the other, that kind of thing. But some of it's personal preference. Sometimes it's ear anatomy. Sometimes it's mandated on which one you use, that kind of thing. But both are available with most audiometers, and then people will use whichever one they need. As an aside, kind of stepping away from the actual testing part, something else that quite often we'll see. So you've got a lot of different parts here. You've got the tip that I showed you. You've got the tubes that couple it. We sell those. You have the insert phones. We sell those. You have the cords that, so if the cord goes bad, you can replace the cord on these. You have on the phones, cords also replaceable. You have cushions. So a lot of times you'll see cords and cushions. I know Steve, I don't know who else in here has talked about this, but like the push and cushion contest. These are the cushions. Sometimes they're red and blue, sometimes they're black, sometimes they're a little different shaped, but they are what go on to the headphone and sit up against the ear. So you've got the cushions on there, you've got the headband, like I said, you've got the cord. So a lot of this stuff is service parts, some of this stuff is consumables, and some of it's equipment. But it all seems to continually, we kind of got this whole life cycle of things that we sell the equipment, we service it, we sell the consumables, we do all of that stuff. As Don said, if anybody has any questions, speak up. This is obviously the first time I've done this, so it's kind of tough. You all just ate. So I'm not always the most dynamic speaker, and this really isn't the most exciting stuff.
So I know the equipment obviously has to be calibrated.
Yes.
But do any of the parts need to be calibrated?
I'm going to say yes, but it's really all one. So what happens is when like right now, computer here. Yes. Okay. So basically, what you're seeing here is what I've got here. But when I press the button and a sound is presented, I want to make sure I've got a number on the dial up here, which currently it's 0. So you're not seeing a live picture. This is when I snap. So right now, this is actually set at 120 decibels, which would be really loud if you had that on your head, but I'm just trying to make it so you all can hear it. Basically, I want to make sure whatever that says there, so let's say I've got it set to 40 decibels, 50 decibels. I want to make sure that what is coming out of here, or what is coming out of here, is that exact level. So that's what calibration is. Calibration is actually, we're sort of calibrating the equipment, but really what we're doing, we're calibrating what are called the transducers, what transmit the sound out. We're calibrating the transducers to the equipment. So if I unplug these, plugged in a different set, I would then have to recalibrate because it's a different transducer, and I need to make sure it's still correct. Can I answer that question?
Yeah, so if you unplug that one
Yes.
and plug in a different one,
Yes.
and then replug this one in, another time, so you unplug the second one and put the first one back in, does it still have to be calibrated again?
So like I've got another set over here. If I plug this set in and brought Chuck in and he calibrated, and then I plug this one back in, I would have to recalibrate it back to this one.
Okay,
So
even though that was already calibrated 2 weeks
because
ago.
right, because
Okay.
we changed what it is. There's like a whole bunch of data inside, and the data that's in here tells it how loud to present so that it's presented the right amount. But there's only one data table left, basically. So once we overwrite that, we'd have to redo it again.
Okay,
It doesn't recognize you may have two different sets of transducers you're gonna use off that one audiometer. It said, this one I gotta pump out this much to get 40, this one I gotta pump out a different amount.
Right, unless you're using two separate transducers. So if I had these plugged in and these plugged in and they're both calibrated, then by just pushing a button, then it's gonna know. But these all plug into the same place, so then it needs to know when something's plugged into that port, how loud does it need to be.
thank you.
You bet. But yeah, ask questions. Yeah, you can answer too if you want. Ask questions. Let me know what I can do. I'll be doing a few more of these, and I've got some ideas on what I'm going to do. But based on what you guys think, what you say, what you ask, will help me to know what I should be doing next time as well. So, okay, so I mentioned the different tones that come out of here, and that's how we do a hearing test. Patient responds. There are a variety of different types of tests and different components of tests too. So we have what I just did here, that's called a pure tone. So it's one frequency. Testing starts basically at middle C on a piano and then goes up 6 octaves from that. And we do some of the inner octaves as well. That's just kind of the standard hearing test. When it comes to like a full comprehensive hearing test, we also do what's called speech audiometry. So you have a mic monitor headset, which I'm sure many of you are either familiar with or have seen that or come across on invoices and that kind of thing. So this is a mic monitor headset here that the audiologist or a tester would wear. So just real simple like this, microphone here. This, right now when I'm pushing this button here, you're able to hear it through here. If I had this plugged in, I'd be hearing it through here instead of that. You all wouldn't be. So this is a mic monitor headset that allows me or whoever's doing the testing to both talk to the patient, hear what's going on, but also to present words as part of the hearing test too. So anybody who's had their hearing test, they're familiar with the tester saying, say the word baseball, say the word cowboy, say the word hot dog. And by doing this, we're looking for how well the person can understand. And we're also looking to make sure how softly they can understand speech. And so we go through quite a bit with this. And again, it's presented through the inserts or through the headphones, just to find out how well can they understand speech. So we give them a list of 25 or 50 words and score that basically. So we end up with a score. So when we're done with those two parts, we know how well they can hear with the headphones on. And we know how well they can understand speech with the headphones on. And again, mic monitor headsets, we sell these. I think we even have the extra foam pads for these things, stuff like that. So each manufacturer, it's getting...
$11.80, Steve said. It is a good buy, isn't it?
Like I said, everybody in here knows a little different bit of this, and so hopefully I'm trying to kind of bring some of this stuff together so you all can understand it a little bit easier. I'm gonna go somewhere else with that, and I forgot what it was. Anyway, so that's right.
But the audiologist is delivering this speech?
There's 2 ways to do it. So there is, stay in the picture here. Sauteing, look at me. There are 2 ways to do it. The most common way is what's called monitored live voice. So I would sit there and I would be saying, say the word baseball, say the word cowboy, say the word ball, say the word, just doing all of that. Carefully monitoring how loud I'm saying it, how I'm presenting it so that it's coming out at the right level, that kind of thing. The best way to do it, and up until recently kind of a lesser convenient way to do it, is to use recorded materials. So most audiometers, most clinical audiometers that are sold today have word lists built in. So if I were to go over to speech and make this so it's audible to you all.
Which one are you using?
This is the GSI Audio Star, which I haven't said because I'm not in the position that I can really lift it and hold it up to you. But I will, thank you for asking and mentioning that. And I've got another one I'm going to show you here in a second, kind of comparing and contrasting. But at the end, you're welcome to come up and take a look. But if I play,
Say the word miss.
and that is just, this is the built-in stuff. So I would not have to, as an audiologist, regulate my voice, say these words, that kind of thing. I can actually kind of somewhat be doing something else as long as I'm listening to what the patient is saying. And there are a variety of word lists on here. It used to be that monitored live voice was faster because you had to use a CD, or when I started a tape deck, way back, record players. There are still people that have desks that have a pull-out drawer with a record player that Gordon Stowe, not the company, Gordon made. Yes.
That was a hot commodity.
And people who still have them are so proud.
Records
Look
are
at this, I still got this, look at this.
Yeah.
So it's, recorded materials go way back, and it's always been the best way because it's the most consistent way, because that way if you've got a cold or something like that, or male voice versus female voice, there can be some variations. But obviously with the record player, tape was a little bit better, but CD even a little bit better than that. But it's challenging, so you can't go back and forth real easy, you can't hop around in words. Even with MP3 players, it's more challenging, where this, I'm seeing what I'm doing, I can click on a word, I can move to the next one, I can go back and forth, I can repeat words, I can, whatever. So with built into the audiometer, this is starting to catch on, although audiologists, we're stubborn. We don't like to learn new things, we don't like to change the way we do things. I had a long conversation with 4 audiologists about this yesterday. So they're saying now, yes, we're gonna do this, and I'll bet I'll talk to them in 2 months and they haven't done. But old habits die hard. But there are different ways to present those words. And the best way is recorded, monitored live voice is the alternate. Okay, so I mentioned headphones or earphones. Headphones are insert earphones, and pure tones, and then words. Well, if I do a hearing test and the sound's having to go through here, into here, and up, if there is a problem, if there's a hearing loss, I don't necessarily know where the problem is. I probably know it's not here because I would have looked in the ear first and made sure that was clear. But if there's a problem here, or if there's a problem here, I'm not going to know which one because the sound's having to go through the whole thing. Now, there's another one, bone conduction, which is this guy right here, which has the bone oscillator, headband, and a cord, all of which, again, yes, we have. And what this does is this actually sits right behind the ear. The bone is called the mastoid, so it's the bony part right behind your ear. Not the most comfortable to wear. I don't know which is worse, where that sits on the mastoid or where this comes across and just like digs into your temple right there. But it's not designed to be comfortable. It's designed to put a certain amount of pressure on here because what you're doing is this is vibrating. I mean, it's literally a vibrator. It is vibrating. And when that does that is, this is all bone around here, and there's obviously bone back there that you can't see. It vibrates the bones of the head. And when it vibrates the bones of the head, it basically sloshes around the fluid in the inner ear. So I had said, normally the way we hear, sound goes through here, and then this little plunger moves the fluid in the inner ear. Or you can vibrate the bone directly and it moves the fluid in the same way. So if I have a hearing loss, when I put the headphones on, and then I put this on and I don't have a hearing loss, that tells me this is working fine, but this isn't. Or if I have a hearing loss when the headphone's on and when I have this on, it says that the problem is in here, because they agree. So we can use this to determine what type of hearing loss it is. If there's a problem in the middle ear, it's called a conductive loss. So it can be fluid from an ear infection, it can be a hole in the eardrum, it can be the bones may not be attached properly, a number of other things that can be going on with that. But that's some problems in there. Or it's called sensory neural, or some people call it nerve hearing loss. That's a little bit basic term. Sensory neural is in here. And usually that means that a lot of the millions of little hair cells that you're supposed to have in there aren't there anymore or aren't working the way they should. So this helps us to make that determination as to what type of hearing loss it is. Now we have, so this is kind of a comprehensive hearing test. So when this is done, the audiologist or the person doing the testing is going to know type of hearing loss, the degree of hearing loss, how much it's impacting their ability to understand speech. And usually either for medical purposes, they'll be able to share this with the physician so that the patient gets treated, or they can make some decisions about amplification, such as hearing aids. Really significant hearing loss can make it cochlear implants, that kind of thing. Now, there is another type of audiometer that we sell, which you can tell just from, without even seeing anything else other than the size of these, this one here, which is much more basic, and it is only going to do the first part of the test, typically with headphones, only going to do pure tone air conduction, so the headphones on, and no speech, no bone conduction, and the purpose of this is to decide, does everything else need to be done or not? So this is usually done, maybe done in a pediatrician's office, maybe general practitioner, somebody who isn't looking to decide, do they need a hearing aid, do they need medical treatment, that kind of thing. This is really more, do they need to go see somebody who may help them with something like that?
Is that what schools use?
Yes, schools, perfect example. Thank you. That's even better example. So yes, schools are going to use this because they're going to test kids, find out can they hear, and if not, send in somebody who can tell more about why. Yeah.
David, that's a 608 or?
This is an Interacoustics AS608 right here. Tiny little thing. I didn't grab batteries for it, or I pass it around, but it is battery operated. Like I said, you guys can come up and take a look at this stuff afterwards. So this has a total of 7 buttons on it. Very simple to use, whereas this, which is a little bit different, has a lot more buttons.
So what do those two sell for?
The AudioStar, depending on what features you have, anywhere from like $9,500 up to, $16, I guess, if you go all the way with fully loaded everything on it with the AM tests and the automated testing, that kind of thing. And then usually with this, we also have installation because in a sound booth we have speakers. I've got something I'll show you about that here in a second. And so if there are speakers, I mentioned that we calibrate these to the pieces of equipment. Well, that's done at the factory on a new one. Well, when we sell speakers, you can't calibrate those till they're installed because that may change some different dynamics of the way of the whole system. And so in that case, that's when I have to have a technician go out with me. So in addition to spending $10,000 for the audiometer, they're spending another $500-600 for installation and that kind of thing as well. So we do some of the calibration on site. Whereas something like this, you're looking at about $1,000. There are some really, really basic, lightweight, not the most durable that you can get for about $700. Those aren't usually the best, but so it varies. You can spend up to $1,400, like an old there were the MA41s and MA40s that were portables that were built like a freaking tank. I mean, these things like thick case, and you could just like throw it on, throw it in the trunk of your car, and they would last forever. And there are some that are probably 20, 30 years still kicking out there when they first came out. Where things are a little bit different now, but the more you pay, the more robust they tend to be for things like that. So this is considered a portable audiometer. Some of them are battery operated, like I said. Some of them aren't. A lot of them anymore are coming with a battery operated option. Just electronics are so much easier now to make things battery operated. So this one here I said does just pure tone air, and that's all it does. There are some that you can get that will do air and bone, although that was the MA40. You can't get the MA40.
I think the MA25 is coming out there in bone.
Is it? Okay.
Either way.
Yeah, so the MA40, Mako had the MA40, they've recently stopped selling it. So
I think they replaced it with the 25 that's going to have bone.
Okay, good. That's good to know. And then there are some portables that have air, bone, and speech. So they either have the built-in or they have a microphone or both. But they're small, light, designed to be carried around. Usually aren't quite as robust as this and what it can do, but it can at least get the job done well enough to go into a patient's home, to take into another part of the clinic and do testing, that kind of thing. Let's see here, I haven't even been looking at my notes, let's figure out where I am. Any questions so far?
I have a question.
Yes.
What kind of batteries does that take?
This one takes 2 AA's.
And how long, what's the battery life on that?
For something like this, they last quite a while. I mean, you would get probably days of testing out.
That AirScan takes 3 AA batteries, and that'll last the school all year.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah.
And if you,
And as the battery goes down, you know, in the test,
Yeah,
the
the
testing is still accurate?
Yes.
and
the
everything?
machine's really good about regulating voltage, so it knows if it's going down, you know, if it goes to a certain point, it'll just shut off.
and it's really not too power intensive because if you think about it, right now it's showing a little display right here, and then every once in a while I'm going to present tones, and you know, so it really doesn't take a lot of
So it lasts longer than your average child's toy.
absolutely, absolutely. It does. Okay, so something that I'm not going to be able to bring this in too easily or at all really. Three other things that I want to touch on. I'm going to touch a little bit on sound booths, but that's something that we can probably talk about another day. But speakers I mentioned a little bit, that we typically, for a clinical application, will sell a couple sets of, or two speakers, sometimes 3, but typically it's 2, so there's one on the right, one on the left. Speakers are usually used when testing kids. So if you have a kid who isn't old enough yet to raise their hand or push a button, at least when they're supposed to, because they like to sit there and push a button. Yeah, they're good at pushing the button. It's not just it's when they're supposed to. That's the picky part.
Chewing on the button.
Oh, all kinds of stuff. Well, kids they walk in, they see a whole bunch of red and blue, and they start grabbing it. But the speakers, so when you're testing little kids, we'll use visual reinforced audiometry or sometimes conditioned play. Visual reinforced is where you get the child looking ahead. Sometimes you'll use something, either somebody or a lighted toy or something like that to keep their attention there. Play a sound through the speaker. When they look over there, you either light up a toy or a video panel or something that gets their attention and rewards them for looking that way. And then you bring their attention back to the center, and then you do another one, and then they look that way, and you reinforce it. So you're reinforcing them looking back and forth at the appropriate time, and then keeping their attention going forward. So that's visual reinforced. Conditioned play is something similar, but this is for a slightly older child that is going to really quickly get bored and say, yeah, I heard it, yeah, it's a toy, nope, don't care. So around 3 years old, you start to get into that, and what you actually do is you will, every time you present a tone, either through headphones or through the speakers, you make it a game. So you give them a block. Throw the block in the bucket when you hear the tone, and you work with, you kind of train them on this. So every time they hear the tone, they throw the block in the bucket. And usually, or not usually, but quite often we'll do that through the speakers. So that's the purpose of the speakers that are in, which we sell and we install and we calibrate. There's a theme. And then, so with this, I mentioned, you know, the VRA, which the VRA, the visual reinforcement toys are, we also have those. There's animated toys that light up, and I'll show you this here in a second. There's some video monitors that show different things, make different sounds, that keep the kids' attention. So these are all usually installed in the sound booth, which sound booths can range anywhere from really small, like you sit down and you're lucky if you can move your elbows, like 2 by 2.5 inside, tiny little things, which aren't used for kids because obviously there's not enough room for all this other stuff in there, all the way up to, I mean, there are booths, we've installed booths that are probably size half this room. And in this company, we've probably done something even bigger than that, I'm sure. It just depends on what the purpose is. But most sound booths have a space on the inside of about 6 foot by 6 foot or 7 foot by 7 foot, something like that, which is large enough for, you know, the patient obviously, or if it's a kid, the parent, assistant, plus the speakers and the toys and everything else in there as well. And the sound booth, the whole point of that is just to keep things quiet enough so that when you do the testing, you know that it's accurate, that it's not outside noises that are impacting that. I'll talk more about this on another one. I'll bring in some different pictures and things like that. But I wanted to mention it because what I'm going to show you here in a minute is being done in a sound booth, so you can kind of see it's a small room. But I'm going to just show you this. I'm not even going to pay attention to the sound on this because it's not really the point. Let me mute this, and I'll narrate. So anyway, so this is a sound booth. This happens to be a GSI TimStar, not the TimStar Pro, the TimStar, which, yes.
Version 1 or version 2?
I couldn't tell you from here, couldn't tell you that. Couldn't tell you that.
That'd be a 2 cents. I did it.
Good point. Oh, nice save. Thank you, Steve. But over here, you'll notice there's a video monitor, and that's going to be the video VRA. And over here, there's a toy next to it, and then down below is the speaker. It's not the clearest, but you'll get the point of what's happening here in just a second. There's one. Oh, seriously? 90 years? It worked on. There we go. Okay. So, what they're going to do is they're going to present some tones, and every time they present a tone, maybe I can't. Sorry. Let me just. You can hear the tones too. I didn't bother to connect my computer to. It's probably not going to.
There we go.
It's not going to be the easiest to hear. There's going to be some talking. Forget the talking. That part doesn't matter. You may be able to hear the tones a little bit. Now, they displayed a tone. The kid looked over there. They reinforced it with the elephant over there, with little symbols. And now